What's good, y'all? It's your boy Ross back at again with another video. So we're gonna check out why are used Maseratis so cheap. Now, I've heard some things about Maseratis, and a lot of the things I've heard from people who have had them or made videos about them, they're not that really good. Mainly the maintenance issues with some of the Maserati models. One of my friends, I want to say, I think either his dad or someone in his family owned a Maserati, and within like the first 8 months they were spending so much money on just maintenance and repairs, to the point where I think they ended up just selling it because it was like it wasn't worth keeping with all the repairs they had to do. And I've heard that a lot about Maserati, so it makes sense that a lot of the used ones are really cheap, because there's probably a good chance that if you buy one that you're going to be trying to fix something's going to go wrong with it relatively soon, so you going to be tanking so much money in them and they don't retain their value as much. So we're going to check out the reasons why Maseratis are so cheap as used vehicles. Appreciate all the love and support. Let's get right to it, man.
Gran Turismo, it's sexy, symphonic, and arguably the most unreliable car that you could ever buy. With an MSRP of well north of $100,000, you can now snag one for a mere 15% of that. And why is this, you ask? Well, let's talk about why the Gran Turismo is the most depreciated car and Maserati is the most unreliable car brand in the world. Let's go. For any car enthusiast out there, or mechanics, or anyone that knows anything about cars, have you ever encountered this? Your friend or family member sees a Maserati, possibly a Gran Turismo on the road or online, and they go, oh, wow! Look at that Maserati, that thing is so nice. And you silently think to yourself, oh Lord, they only knew what I knew, they would never say that again.
And that's the thing. Like, before I knew about that, I used to think, oh, Maseratis are beautiful. I mean, they are beautiful looking cars. And then when I found out, the horror stories and how many people, bought one new, and it was a nightmare. And like I said, one of my personal friends said his dad, I don't believe it, he said his dad or somebody he really knew close in his family bought one brand new, and within 8 months they got rid of it because it was like, there's no fucking point. It was a money pit. So,
well, that's kind of the gist of Maserati's problems as a whole. You see, to the average Joe, hearing the name Maserati evokes notions of luxury, performance, and sex appeal. It almost has the same effect as Ferrari for some folks, and to be honest, there's a very good reason for that. When Maserati first became a thing, well, they were a race car brand. They didn't care about road cars at all, just like Ferrari. And they were really successful at racing, just like Ferrari. And then they took this pedigree that they garnered and transferred it into the road cars for the most affluent buyers to cruise in, just like Ferrari. And these were stunning cars in the upper echelon of luxury, performance, and yes, sex appeal. I mean, look at this.
Yeah.
Stunning, right? It was cars like that and this that established Maserati as a Ferrari-adjacent brand that had the cachet to justify really high prices. But that Maserati is dead and gone. What most people think of when they hear Maserati now, well, it's not the A6 GCS or the Casman. It's usually something like the Gran Turismo, a car that is aged so poorly that it's consistently finding itself as the subject of, well, videos like this one, where it's posed as a money pit, unreliable, and just plain untouchable. Now, as I was doing my research for this video, I ran across a super clever comment by a Reddit poster named Clever Donnie1. And guys, this sums up exactly why Maseratis depreciate like a stock market crash. Just imagine you've entered a Maserati dealership, and the salesperson goes, "Good day, Mr. Customer. Have you ever wanted to buy a BMW with the Italian flair?" Well, good news, because the Maserati Ghibli Fontanaio is here to fill your need. The performance of a Lexus, the reliability of a Jeep, and the interior quality of a Chevy combined to create a truly horrifying ownership experience. Now, you too can own a Fiat for the price of a Mercedes until it breaks. So, yeah, let's start with this. Remember how Maserati used to be a Ferrari?
That's funny. I like how you broke that down.
Adjacent brand? Well, here is the current average used sales price of a Ferrari. Almost $200,000.
That's used, ladies and gents. That's not new. That's used. And a lot of people don't be putting on many mileage on their Ferraris either, but they're very well made vehicles. But of course, the cost of owning a used one is very expensive. The maintenance is very expensive, but they're well made and they're Ferraris, bro. You're driving in a Ferrari. It's a class type thing. Like, it's gonna turn heads. Like, oh damn, you're in a Ferrari. You know what I'm saying? And not everybody's in a Ferrari. It's the best of the best for some people.
On average. Now, the current average used sales price of a Maserati, just under $39,000. Gran Turismo itself, well, not much better. Yeah, now, clearly, there is a big six-figure fall from grace between these two brands that used to be considered equals.
Yeah.
So, how did this happen to the Gran Turismo and really Maserati as a whole? Well, you see, Maserati wasn't doing great in the late 1980s and early 1990s, and in order to save the company, they had to go on the market for a buyout. Guess who stepped to the plate?
Who?
Fiat Chrysler.
Who?
What?
Sounds like a match made in heaven. Not. So after 5 short years later, they didn't want to bear all the burden, so they sold half of Maserati to, you guessed it, the Italian stallion, Ferrari. And with that partnership came a new era of Maseratis with cars like the Quattroporte sedan, and of course, the Gran Turismo. The Gran Turismo was, let's be honest, sexy as hell. I mean, this thing had all the right curves in all the right places.
Yeah,
it
beautiful
looked more
looking car.
Than a supermodel at the Monaco Grand Prix. And under that gorgeous hood, Ferrari-sourced 4.2-liter V8. Yes, that's right. We're talking about some serious Italian horsepower. It's no wonder this beauty had a price tag of almost $114,000 when it hit the streets back in 2008. I mean, yeah, it was basically a supercar with a Trident badge on it. And back then, that price tag may have seemed justified. The interior looked comfy and pretty high quality. It also sounded amazing.
Sounds great.
But, guys, remember, this was a Fiat Chrysler product. After people started buying them and living with them, their true colors started to shine through. Interior pieces were coming apart, brakes were acting up, suspension components started to make noises that you didn't want to hear, and clutches on both the automatic and single clutch automated manual transmissions started to burn themselves up. Burned. And the big one, electronics. Oh boy, Maserati could not figure out how to make electronics work or continue to work for long, which is why ECU problems, infotainment problems, and a slew of other wiring issues started to make themselves known. Now, other cars have similar problems. I know that.
Yeah.
But when you couple the Gran Turismo's smorgasbord of issues with the cost and maintenance, then it really becomes an issue. Owners on Vehicle History reported spending $3,000 a year just to keep their car roadworthy, and others reported individual repairs for larger parts like the clutch that cost up to 10 grand in one visit. Talk about putting your mechanic's son and daughter through college. I mean, why so expensive? Well, not only is this an Italian car that tends to be fragile in general, the price of parts and labor for these were immense. Owners far more headaches, they still had a brain, and smiles while owning the Gran Turismo. But the reliability wasn't the only thing for its historic depreciation, because when compared to similarly priced rivals at its time, the driving experience, well, it just wasn't worth the price of ownership. At that price point, folks would be cross-shopping an Aston Martin Vantage V8, a 6-speed manual transmission, or a Jaguar XKR, or even a Porsche 911. And all of those cars have arguably more timeless designs and better driving dynamics than the Gran Turismo. But wait, there's more, because the maintenance costs and the poor standing against rivals was only compounded by the lack of updates to this car. I mean, the first generation Gran Turismo went on sale in 2007 and didn't end until 2019. That is 12 years of one generation where no significant changes and improvements were made. The only updating that they did was release some more expensive and racier versions, which are genuinely really cool cars, but it wasn't enough to change the trajectory of the Gran Turismo's fate, or really the fate of Maserati as a whole either. You see, the sedan version known as the Quattroporte was actually pretty well received. Well, that is after they got rid of the automated manual transmission, and that's a whole nother video. But once it got a proper automatic transmission, it was one of the best sports luxury sedans that you could buy, period. They had struck gold in the experience and dynamics department with this car. But but the Quattroporte's transmission mishaps, which included brand new cars roasting their clutch on the drive home from the dealership,
Wow.
literally, along with a slew of electrical problems and mechanical failures on the Gran Turismo, simply tainted the brand's image as a whole. They didn't have the depth that Ferrari had with their supercars and hypercars that could maintain the desirability and overshadow some of the other models' shortcomings. The Quattroporte and Gran Turismo were all that Maserati really had at this point. And when the Ghibli, Levante, and Grecale all came along, it was too late for the company to internally restore their former Ferrari-adjacent glory. Mostly because they are now owned by Stellantis, which has had some of the worst business in the industry over the last several years. Watch our video on that right up here. But today, it leaves Maserati with the reality of this. Used 2008 Gran Turismos are costing around $20,000 on average.
Jeez.
That means you can find them for even less. Like this 2011 convertible that sold for under 19 grand.
Wow.
16% of the original sales price, or an 84% depreciation. An Italian brand like this with so much heritage should not see this level of value loss when others like Ferrari have cars from the same era that have become future classics. Speaking of Ferrari, these cars have a Ferrari engine, remember? That should be desirable as but unfortunately, it was just a little too late. But let's just zoom out for a minute. Those are just the old cars, right? And their brand's image is one thing, but what about their new cars? Well, remember that Stellantis ownership? You see, they tend to share parts with several of their other brands. Even a high-class Italian brand like Maserati is not exempt. And not only has that led to quality control issues, but also problems with electronics and programming, which nowadays affects everything from the small interior stuff to the transmission tuning. I mean, just a few years ago, Maserati ranked 40th out of 40 brands in Reliability Index's reliability tests. And now, despite becoming more popular amongst buyers, cars like the Ghibli are expected to be less reliable than its competitors according to Consumer Reports. And everything considered, it's no wonder why, next to maybe Jeep, Maserati is consistently one of the least reliable manufacturers in modern times. And yes, it's certainly advisable to avoid certain Maseratis, and especially the used ones. There's still potential in this brand that is absolutely worth considering. For example, they just brought back the Gran Turismo this year, and it's been commended for its seamless duality of luxury and sports car, and according to Car and Driver, sets a new standard for the Maserati brand and delivers on its multi-function mission. And
Really?
that's pretty high praise.
That's high praise.
Considering all the shortcomings of Maserati in the past. And while they did criticize its
Looks
ridiculous
beautiful.
price point of $160,000 eye-watering dollars,
Nah, bro. Here, I get it, but no. Like $160K. That car better last me 20 plus years. I better not have to make any major maintenance updates or cost, upkeep in that department. The only reason why I say that is because of the past iterations of so many issues. I would think you're trying to build up your brand and you charging that much out the gate. Nah, bro. Not saying you can't charge up to 6 figures, but if most of your cars depreciate at a ridiculous rate and you have so many maintenance and quality issue problems in the past, may not be with this particular model, but people can only go off of, history and what you've put out. 160, I don't know about that, bro. I don't know about that one.
and its lack of a manual transmission, the cohesiveness of the chassis overshadowed any low points. You got the coin. And that's not all the good news either, because remember how we discussed Maserati's lack of depth when you compare it to Ferrari? Well, they solved that with the MC20 supercar,
What is this?
the spiritual successor to the iconic 90s homologation special, the MC12. And it's not just that Maserati actually built this thing that gives them so many brownie points, it's that it's genuinely an amazing driving experience. The MC20 wasn't only called a return to glory for Maserati this year by Car and Driver, but it also won Evo's 2022 Car of the Year. And prompted phrases like utterly brilliant to drive and look at.
It looks beautiful.
And what's more, well, they are also getting into the EV game, which could be a successful venture for them, especially coming at the heels of the great cars that I just mentioned. I mean, listen, overall, there is a lot to like and dislike about this historic brand. They've had their great moments in each decade, but they've certainly had their downfalls as well.
Oh, for sure.
We all. And even though one could argue that the bad might outweigh the good, yeah, We don't want to see Maserati fail. In fact, we want to see the opposite here at Ideal. We want to see great cars getting the respect that they deserve, as any person in the car industry would. But if we have to emphasize one negative thing that you should take away from this video, just don't buy a used Maserati Gran Turismo. Just don't. Friends don't let friends buy Maseratis. They're old. So, what is your verdict? Is the Gran Turismo's look and engine worth the headache? Is Maserati a brand that could rival Ferrari in the future? Well, let us know down below, and let us know if you like this video by hitting the like.
Hey man, this was a good one, man. Very informative. And you know, like I said, I've heard not really great things about Maserati over the years. So my question, you know, ask y'all in the comments. Would you guys, if you had the opportunity, would you guys buy the new Maseratis that are coming out, the later models, the 2024 and beyond models? Would y'all, you know, if you had the opportunity to buy one, would you, or would you still stay clear of them because of the past, you know, their past reputation? Or would you be more forgiving and maybe looking to their newer cars for the price that they're asking for at that? Y'all let me know down below. I appreciate all the love, support. Road to 10K, and I'll see y'all next one. Peace.